Good evening and welcome back to the Committee of the Whole meeting for Wednesday, November 13th. We're reconvening at 7:20. I don't believe we have any public comments tonight, Jonathan? No. We move now to 5 delegations. 5.1, Strathmore Handy Bus. If you wouldn't mind coming to the microphone and then introducing yourselves to the people at home. Good evening.
There we go. There we go. Got the right one. Yeah, we, I guess, are here to ask for an extension to the MOU that is coming due the end of December of 2024. And I think we've had considerable amount of correspondence with your financial people and other people here. And we're just here basically to answer any other questions that council may have about the handy bus and kind of moving forward into the next, what we're looking for would be another 4-year term like the last one. Any other question? Or,
Sure.
open for
I think
questions.
we received information in your financials.
Yeah.
Councillor Peterson?
Thanks, and thanks for all the information that council is able to have in front of them. It's really helpful. One of the questions we had was, what is the cost for a round trip to Calgary? And it was just a curiosity question. It just
Currently,
yeah.
the east side of Calgary is $75. The west side of Calgary is $80.
Okay, and then the other question that I had, and I can see where your stresses are, and I can see why they are there. And I just wanted to start out by saying that when I was looking at the calculations, less than 68% of your funding goes to the people who staff. That's an incredibly responsible level of staffing. So the dedication from that perspective from your board and your staff, really to be commended when you look at this budget in its totality. But I'm wondering, if one of the solutions that you've looked at, because you're going to need additional revenue and or response, some level, different level of response, if you would ever look at utilizing threshold funding in a different way, so multiple levels of funding based on threshold, and if you could do that through, and Kevin's going to come over here and slap my head for saying this, but through in-kind services from the town. So for instance, Family Community Support Services do threshold level determinations in lots of other things, and I don't know how that would look, but I was wondering if that is a consideration that you have going forward.
I think it's something you looked at.
Well, yeah, we haven't really explored exactly that, but I know we've engaged various grants through the county as well as through the government, but that is something we can definitely look at, but we haven't to date, no. Yeah, for sure.
Any other questions from council? Councillor Langmaid?
Thank you, Worship. I think my only question was, in the package, I was just looking for how have the rates being charged to the users changed in the past 2 or 3 years, if at all? Has there been any incremental increase?
Yes, our last rate increase was April 1st, 2024, and we will have another rate increase in 2025.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Langmaid. Deputy Mayor Wiley?
Hi, thank you for the work you do.
Yeah, thank you.
My question starts with just for the people at home. So what is the current MOU? What do you currently receive from the town of Strathmore in the MOU?
So it was originally the $175,000 was in place for, I'm going to say, more than a decade. And when we sought 4 years ago, when we sought the MOU, that was a base rate, and then it was increased at the increase of taxes or the Calgary, what do they call it? The CPR, yeah, either or, yeah.
That was 3%.
Yeah, so that's about that 2 or 3%. And that's carried through for the entire MOU. So the MOU is ending up at about, in this fourth year, was about 196. I think you'd have the exact numbers there somewhere.
Yeah, roughly. And
Yeah.
then for the people at home, what is the Handy Bus asking to increase the next MOU to?
Well, we would ask to start at the, basically roll over the terms of the last one. So we would start with what this MOU ended with, and it seems like that incremental increase has worked for both us and the town for their budgeting purposes and takes care of some of the inflation we've all experienced.
Yeah, tell me about it. So to put that in perspective for anyone listening at home, 175,000, and if it's increased, it'd be a little bit more. That's the equivalent of us increasing taxes 1%, which obviously you're not asking to do, but just, which works out to the average house, the average property in town is about $165 per property is giving toward this organization. So I'm trying to put it in perspective because I just want everyone to just think about how significant that is. Last week, the town looked at our budget for the first time it was presented to us, and I've had concerned residents reach out to me. The most heartbreaking question I got from a resident was, I can't even afford stockings for Christmas, and the town is rolling out tens of thousands of dollars in Christmas lights in Kinsman Park. The resident says to me, what are you doing to tighten your belt? What are you doing in these difficult times to watch every single penny? And so my question is as much for the people as home, because I do have some sense of this, but what is the Handy Bus organization looking at doing or considering doing in the next year in order to get through? Like you said, it doesn't even cover inflation, what you're asking for. So what are you guys doing in order to get through this difficult time and tighten the belt, so to speak?
A couple of things that we've undertaken. We reviewed our bus replacement plan. And one of the things that we are going to do is stretch out the time that we actually, or the miles that we put on the buses, and get a bit better value of the actual capital that we invest. Of course, there's going to be rate increases. And I just recently looked at a very simple calculation over the last 5 years of our total cost and total number of trips to see if we're actually delivering trips today at what cost compared to 5 years ago. Our costs keep coming down with the exception of COVID. COVID, they went way up because our fixed costs were up the same, ridership down. So today we're actually delivering a ride cheaper than we were 5 years ago.
And our ridership is up
And
by a lot.
our ridership is up. We're
At the end of 2023, we were just around 4,000 trips for the year. And just, a year ago, we were like 2,600. So they've really increased. The number of people utilizing the service has gone up significantly. So that's something we have to consider as well, is how do you keep servicing when your expenses keep increasing as well in the same way?
Would you be able to describe, oh, sorry.
Carry on.
Would you be able to describe any of the fundraising efforts that you guys are doing?
Well, we do apply for and have received some different government grants, SIP grants.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
we're
go
waiting on the project grant from the government that we'll hear about in March, that was applied for in September. That's hopefully to buy one of the new buses. We do apply, like I said, through the county for their CERB, their community enhancement, operational as well as their project grants. So we were successful in getting funding last year or this year for that. But because we've changed our plan to buy another bus later in 2025, we've had to extend the project portion of that so that we can't reapply this year for it because we didn't spend it, right? So any grants that come available, though, on our timelines, we're very good at applying for.
My final question is, I've heard about, and you'll have to excuse me if this sounds completely heartless, but I've heard about the idea of a two-tier system where you charge a different price for somebody who is able-bodied versus somebody who requires the handy bus services fully. Is there any talk about that on the board?
You know what? We threw out around a bunch of ideas of what could possibly work and what wouldn't work. And because I'm in the lodge, I said I can't have any changes to the people that utilize the service. Whether they're in the lodge or in the town, whoever they are, has to be straight across the board. So no, we aren't going that route at all. In our board meetings, we toss around a lot of possibilities and ideas, but the clients are ultimately the ones that we take into consideration first and foremost all the time. So we have to make changes, but changing the service itself is not going to happen. In 1986, when the handy bus started, I was reading history, and they actually focused really on people that weren't able to use a taxi or have a car.
Yeah.
So that would have looked like a lot of able-bodied people at that time wouldn't have been eligible for the handy bus. And over the years, we've been taking older adults who maybe don't have family, maybe don't have a car, but they're not necessarily in a wheelchair or a walker situation. They just need to get to an appointment. And we've been accommodating that in Strathmore as well as in the county. There's regular riders in the county that come to Strathmore for day programs 4 times a week, and they do pay for that. So no, there can't be a two-tier system for that.
I just really appreciate what you're doing. Thank you for the information tonight.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Peterson.
Just to follow up to that, so are still the majority of the trips medical in nature?
Majority are, yeah. But there are social trips too.
Well, that's
You know,
health related too?
yeah, like social trips are going to family gatherings, going to church services, coming into day programs, things like that, right? But yeah, they do. There is a tiered system in the pay schedule. Then you do pay different rates for a social trip than you do for a medical trip. Yeah.
I really appreciate that. Thanks very much.
Any further questions for? Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Okay, thanks very
And
much.
we'll be discussing this a lot coming up.
Okay.
That brings us to 5.2, Strathmore and District Agricultural Society. Oh, Jonathan, did you want to do that? We can go after this delegation. After this delegation, we're? Okay. Let's do the delegation. Did you? Good evening, Ryan and Megan. How are you?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councillors and administration. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and speak to you tonight. Actually, it caused me to reflect back about 6 years ago because we're going to talk about the RCMP musical ride. But my very first time speaking to council in this position was when the RCMP musical ride came here in 2019. So bit of a trip down memory lane there. My name is Ryan Schmidt. I'm the General Manager of the Agricultural Society, and with me is Megan Miller, our Head of Operations. And we're here to speak about renewal, hopefully, of our Strathmore Stampede agreement with the town, and also a potential visit by the RCMP of their musical ride. So the town of Strathmore and the Strathmore District Agricultural Society have a long history of cooperating and working together and mutual support. I think it's 51 years. Councillor Langmaid spoke at our 50th anniversary gathering last year about this time. So it's been a long, important relationship, and I want to express the Ag Society's thanks for the town's support over these decades. We believe it's been a good investment, we hope. It's resulted in a number of facilities in our community, including quad baseball diamonds with concession, and we just invested in redoing Diamond 1 of those diamonds this fall, and those will be in action next year. We have a 120-unit campground now in the town. There's a home for the outdoor rink, which the town kindly looks after. We have 5 rental buildings that are provided for use for other community groups and nonprofits in the community, so they have somewhere to do their activities. We have 2 practice arenas, our main rodeo arena, and of course, that sums it up. And it also has resulted in a whole lot of large community events. We now run High School Rodeo, the Cowboy Town Concert Series, Strathmore Stampede, the Senior Pro Rodeo. We have Canada's largest rodeo school here in Strathmore. We have our Fright Night event. And then there's third-party events that are growing and more coming to our community because of these facilities. So the last Cowboy Standing Bull Riding event, the Double S Barrel Racing Series, the Enbridge Tour of Alberta now comes regularly to Strathmore, and of course, recently in the last couple of years, the Medieval Fair. So what this means is that your investment in the Agricultural Society is being leveraged to build our community. We've been growing. So since that time when I came to see you in 2019, our revenues have reached $3.85 million. They were $1.9 million at that time in 2019. So that's how much your investment is being leveraged to grow the activities that are taking place. And that with that, we have $3.5 million in expenses now, which were about 1.9 when I started as well. And so that money is being spent and put back into our community. Any profits we have go back into investing in the facilities that we maintain for the community. And we know from our statistics that 55% of the attendees of Strathmore Stampede come from outside of the town of Strathmore. That means that money is being transferred into our community through this event. The economic impact of Strathmore Stampede alone is now over $5 million. In addition, our campground has become, unforeseen by us, really a new source of affordable housing in the community. We have 60 units occupied going into this winter, so families that are staying into the campground, and so that's a service we are providing. And we're growing and adding events and facilities at all times to serve the community. And we try to do this always in the most fiscally sustainable manner we can. We are a nonprofit, but we try to think like a business so that we cost taxpayers as little as possible. Over 95% of our revenues are self-generated. So it's for all these reasons, the facilities, the events, the housing, economic development, and community building, that we believe the partnership with the town of Strathmore is crucial for the quality of life in our town. We would very much appreciate it if the town would continue to support the Strathmore Stampede with a 3-year agreement at $28,000. And in return, the Ag Society will provide to the town of Strathmore and its residents unique branding, marketing, and hosting opportunities that are noted in the letter provided to the town, and residents will continue to be able to be beneficiaries of this great event. And I'm going to turn it over to Megan now, who's going to speak a little bit about the fulfillment and package details in that sponsorship.
Thanks, Ryan. Okay, so with this package, there's a bunch of different opportunities that you guys get to utilize. So we have the titanium sponsor package. It's valued at $12,000. The announcer booth branding and sponsorship, that's $9,000. The timed event shoot sponsorship, which is $3,000. You also get a Chuck Wagon Heat sponsor, which is $2,100 value. A Chuck Wagon Championship buckle and presentation, which is $2,500. And then the Grandstand Suite, which is valued at $5,000. And then this kind of breaks down in like what you get, kind of the perks, I guess, of the deal. So you get the Grandstand Suite for all the events. You get the dignitary passes for all the counselors. The Jumbotron logo recognition. You get a sponsor flag in the grand entry or the sponsor parade. You get the large announcer booth sign, which looks really good because that's the feature of the attraction in the new infield suites. You get three 3x10 banners in the rodeo infield, one timed event shoot sign, a logo placement in the rodeo and chuck wagon day sheets, announcer and website recognition. You get social media mentions on the Strathmore Stampede Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, which our Facebook page now has 15,000 followers, and our Instagram just over 5,000. You get representation at the chuck wagon buckle presentation. You get announcer script read throughout the weekend. Naming rights for a chuck wagon heat. You get 10 VIP parking passes, 20 all-event grandstand tickets, and the tickets to our reception and cabaret, which is always a good time. So that kind of sums up what you guys get perks back, but I thought of a cool idea, I guess, that could be of interest to you guys. We could include an activation opportunity to have a booth or an activity to engage with the community, residents and visitors coming to town. This could really showcase what this amazing town has to offer, or even educate residents with any pertinent information on that weekend. So kind of give you guys a space to do whatever you feel is important to kind of get out how amazing this town is. So yeah, that kind of sums up the Stampede package. And then the second part of this is the RCMP musical ride that has some interest in coming to town. So we are requesting the blue side of the Family Center from July 25th to August 8th.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, sorry.
I didn't quite understand your additional idea. So are you
Sorry,
saying
yeah.
that there would be a space dedicated for the council to meet with whomever we choose? Is that what you
Yeah,
were saying?
we'd love to just give you a spot, probably a good location on the grounds where everybody's kind of walking by and you can do an activity or just have information,
okay.
whatever you see fit.
Not like. Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry, Ryan also just pointed out that we will want to include a 30-second Jumbotron commercial that will be played during each rodeo and truck wagon performance. And one guaranteed speaking spot for mayor or deputy mayor during a performance to give greetings to the crowd as well. So, and then we have the attendance of Miss Strathmore Stampede at any of the town events as requested. She definitely adds a bonus feature for all the family and kids to see. So if you guys are interested in that. Okay, sorry, back to musical ride. So yeah, we are requesting the blue side for the July 25th to August 8th. And this just includes for setup and teardown and cleanup just to make sure that facility is perfect for the ice to go back in. So this will be for just all the stalling and stabling of the musical ride horses. This is the same setup we had 6 years ago. We will have a team of volunteers looking after this piece, ensuring everything is properly procured. When this event came to town last, it attracted a whole new crowd of tourists. It really created a unique vibe to kind of round out the Stampede. This sought-after entertainment act carefully selects which events to join years in advance. The fact that they are interested in coming back to our town shows how much they enjoyed the hospitality given by our community. It is such a special treat to host the RCMP musical ride, especially when it aligns so perfectly with our event and society mission. You can appreciate the elegance of tradition, horsemanship, and heritage. So yeah, we'd really love to bring these guys back as they are a true one-of-a-kind event that will just top up the Strathmore Stampede weekend.
Thanks, Megan, and we're happy to answer any of council's questions.
Thank you both. Councillor Mitzner.
So there's no additional cost for the musical ride? You're just looking for usage of the blue side?
That's correct. There are some additional costs with hosting them. We need to purchase feed and shavings, renting the panels for setting up all the stalls, but we would look after that through other funds or looking. You technically can't get a sponsor for the musical ride, but we could get some supporters. I think there's some who might do that. So we'll take care of the other costs.
Thank you for that, Councillor Mitzner. Councillor Peterson.
So I was thinking about that with regards to the musical ride, and because I'm really old, I remember a community, it was Medicine Hat, I believe, that had the musical ride, and they had children were able to sponsor a horse. And it was just a community project to sort of enhance the whole cachet of and it was wildly successful. And I remember being part of that committee and just only ever getting into trouble because there weren't enough horses. And yeah, thinking that, well, you could do multiple partners for a horse. But anyway, I don't know if that would be allowed under their, but it was certainly a really cool project that we undertook.
Yeah, we can ask them. Actually, I don't know if you mentioned this, Megan, I missed it, but they're coming for a site visit on November 24th to look at the facility and all the setup. So when we meet with them that day, we could ask them about
Well, and you know, we are the community whose motto is Rural Reimagined. And I think we could bring them lots of added cachet, you know, in terms of that. I also want to express our appreciation. I believe that the future of the town and the Ag Society are irrevocably connected, and that you know, we are never going to be able to ignore the fact that that our future well-being and the enhancements that will come to this community will come because these two major partners, you know, will figure out a way forward and in everything that we do. And I think in terms of aligning our vision, I like what you say about being able to, you know, have an opportunity for the town to promote tourism and thinking about how we could leverage that to the highway. You know, our mayor has talked about, you know, utilizing some of our highway frontage amenities, you know, to be able to bring further activity into the community, especially into that area. And so I think that's a great idea, and there are probably all kinds of other partnerships that the town has that we could leverage to align with your objectives and without it costing more money, you know, that we could go to our community to do that. So I really look forward to brainstorming all those future opportunities, and thank you for being such a valuable partner to community, and thank your board and your staff for the work that they do.
Well, thank you, Councillor Peterson. I will definitely pass it on. We appreciate the kind words.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Any further questions? Councillor Mitzner?
While you're here, I have a quick question, kind of off topic, but is there any expansion possibilities for your permanent fixture sites? Like you have 120 now or 160?
That's a great question, Councillor Mitzner. So we have 120 sites in the campground. I believe the number is 45 are year-round service sites. So we do have more than that are fully serviced, but with the deep utilities, where the water and sewer are at 8 feet deep, so they don't freeze up in the winter, we have about 45. We did pass in our most recent budget on October 30th to add 10 more sites to be year-round fully serviced because we recognize the need. So with the 60 units, that obviously means there's 15 people staying in our campground that have just power this winter. So they'll have to be making trips to the washroom and back for water. So it's definitely a need, and we are investing $75,000 into that next year to add 6 more year-round sites within that 120.
So does the town of Strathmore not provide the water and sewer?
So we have an agreement going back to when the Ag Society transferred land to the town for the Civic Center and I believe also the Family Center, where the town gives us a discounted rate for water and sewer costs. So we pay a flat rate for water and sewer. And then part of that agreement was that discounted rate. So we do get a discounted rate for water and sewer costs, yes.
And what is
But what I'm talking about is the infrastructure itself, the pipes.
okay?
In the
And
ground.
what is their monthly fee to include water and sewer?
So we don't have like a water and sewer fee. We just have a set rate.
Yeah,
for,
per month, and that
yeah.
includes water and sewer.
Yes, that's correct,
What
yeah.
is it per RV?
So for, I don't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but it ranges between about, currently between about $700 and $1,100, depending on whether you have a 15 amp site, a 30 amp site, or a 50 amp site.
Because some of those
That
people.
includes electrical as well.
Yeah, and some of those people have been there for 5+ years.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Some have been longer than I've been there for sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
So.
Any further questions? Thank you, Ryan and Megan, for your presentation. Next week, we begin our intense budget work, so we'll be discussing this as well.
Thank you very much. If there's any possibility to know on the musical ride before the site visit on November 24th, that's helpful, but we understand you have your own process. And if it's not determined at that point, we'll just let them know that, so.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
We do have a meeting 1 week from today as well.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
Yeah, but
Okay, excellent, thank you.
thanks again. Councillors, you received an email about a motion? Councillor Peterson?
Your worship, I would move that council amend the November 13th, 2024 Committee of the Whole agenda to add a second closed meeting session at this time. And it is regarding advice from officials under FOIP Section 24, subsection 1A.
Thank you.
Strathmore Handy Bus Agreement, sorry.
Thank you. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? That motion is carried. We move now to item 6, confirmation of minutes, 6.1, Committee of the Whole meeting minutes for October 9th, 2024. Jonathan?
Thank you, Worship Council. I just wanted to confirm that the second closed meeting session would be at the end of the agenda, following
That's the
the
end of the
question
agenda, yes.
and answer period.
Thanks, Mark. Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'd like to move that council adopt the October 9th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes as presented in Attachment 1.
Thank you. Any discussion on that? All in favor? That motion is carried. 6.2, Committee of the Whole meeting minutes, October 25th. Deputy Mayor Wiley?
I'll move that council adopt the October 23rd, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes as presented in Attachment 1.
Thank you for that motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? And that motion is carried. We move now to item 7, business, 7.1, recreation and culture cost recovery policy. Good evening, Mark.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Tonight here, I'm here to speak to the development of a policy related to recreation and cultural fees. The purpose of this policy is to develop a philosophy that will guide and effectively allocate public funds, ensuring that costs to deliver recreation and cultural programs and services are recovered through the establishment of fees. This policy aims to provide and deliver recreational services reflecting the values of the community and balance fees in consideration with the following objectives: ensuring fees contribute to the public's effective and efficient use of town resources, reducing reliance on property taxes by recovering a portion of costs for various services, providing a consistent and equitable process that encourages accessibility and participation, identify relative pricing provided by various user group segments, and establish meaningful and realistic goals that provide flexibility to meet evolving social values and changing fiscal pressures. So I've included a draft policy that I'm hoping council can provide some feedback on. We've also included some potential rates and fees on cost recovery for different facilities and overall general philosophy, cost recovery at approximately 50%. And that's based on our existing fees and charges that are proposed for 2025 budget. So if council or if anybody has any questions, I'm prepared to answer them.
Thank you. Mark, that 50% cost recovery, is that a typical one that municipalities strive for?
Your Worship, we're still conducting some research on that. We've done some preliminary research and we found one community in southern Alberta that's about 75%. Conflicting or comparing that one to another community, this is a couple years old, and they were at 48% cost recovery. A lot of the municipalities that we've searched for don't have a formalized policy that we're presenting here, and so trying to gather some data as well as it's being budget time, we're still conducting some research. So our hope is that council will review this policy and that we can come back at a future time with some firmer numbers from other municipalities within the province.
Do you know what we'd be at this point in time?
Yes, Your Worship. We've done some preliminary numbers, and this is obviously year to date for 2024. So we still anticipate some significant revenue coming through for the rest of the, on average, we're approximately 52-53%. But that number can fluctuate based on some additional factors or different expenditures, such as transfers to reserves and things like that.
Thank you for that. Any Deputy Mayor?
Sorry, I just want to check I heard you correctly. So you said once this policy, you've got some direction on it, then you'll come back and fill in that number of 50%? Right now, it's just a placeholder?
That's correct. Through the chair, we've used 50% as our draft for discussion tonight. How council wishes to provide some direction. Again, unfortunately, access to other municipalities to kind of give comparisons hasn't been able to. We've just been slow trying to gather some of that data. This 50% is based on the fees that we're currently proposing for the 2025 budget.
Yeah, so it's always my preference here. I want to read this here. When we look at the policy statement, there's two on here I just really, oh, sorry. We are on page 117 of the full agenda package. Just the policy statement, ensuring fees contribute to the public's effective and efficient use of town's resources. Love it. Reducing the reliance on property tax by recovering a portion of the costs for various services from the users that primarily benefit from them. Love it. I really want to emphasize those first two here, because every time that we use property taxes to pay for our cultural and recreation facilities, all those residents that don't primarily benefit from them are subsidizing those residents that do primarily benefit from it. So I'm not so pie in the sky that I believe we could hit 100% recovery on these, but I think 50% sounds low to my ear. I would like to see direction from this council that's directing administration to slowly start seeing that cost recovery go up. If we're currently sitting at 50 to 53%, I would like to see a plan where it's going up to 55 to 60, and I'd be curious what administration would think about that. I would love to see that, or what the rest of council might think.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I guess
Your Worship.
Yep, Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. I also like the idea of easing the burden on the tax side, and I would love to see higher revenues as well. I think the issue is, though, that we need to make sure we're looking at other levers to pull besides just our fee rates. There's a lot of ways to increase revenue, and without necessarily making it prohibitively expensive, I guess, for too many residents to access these things. I also think it's worth noting that there are recreation amenities that are not captured in any fee bylaw at all. And, I'll give you an example. The pathways, for example, we spend tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars on pathways and maintaining pathways and replacing pathways. And we charge people $0 for going for walks and stuff like that. So I think it's worth kind of keeping in mind that while there are some amenities that are kind of more noticeable, like the big building, for instance, and we're looking at what we charge people to use parts of the building, we have to keep in mind as well that there are amenities that we charge $0 for, and so and I'm not suggesting we charge people to use the pathways, but I just think we need to look at other. I would prefer to look at other levers besides just the rate fees. I was mentioning, I was talking with Mayor Fuel today, and I was talking about how when I go to swimming pools elsewhere, there are you can rent parts, parts that are adjoining to the pool, for instance, for birthday parties. You can rent towels, you can rent locks. You know, there's kind of ways, or even equipment, you know, like some people rent tubes at different pools and stuff like that. So those are ways that we can, you know, bring in more revenue without actually, you know, kind of increasing the cost to attend some of these amenities. And again, as I kind of have mentioned, you know, prior to this, we have to be careful about pricing ourselves out of attainability for a lot of people. And as well, we like this. It's also important to remember too that when it comes to recreation, and healthcare, prevention a lot of times is worth more than you know, you'll get more than when you have to spend when somebody's health is deteriorated. So it is an investment in kind of people's health and people's future. And so there's kind of a lot of different angles to consider when we're doing this. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I have a couple of questions. First is just one of clarification. Which facilities, in terms of the ones that we charge fees for, or, you know, that are, I guess I'm looking, that are in a building, which ones are included within this? Is it all of them, specifically the curling rink?
Excuse me, through the chair, Councillor Langmaid, the 4 facilities that we're speaking to, directly facilities, are the Sports Center, the Aquatic Center, the Family Center, and the Civic Center. The lease agreement with the curling club, they operate independently of the town. It should note too that the goal of this policy is also to extend beyond the facilities and to speak about equipment and facility rentals that could include park rentals, setups for picnic tables and events that would be built into this policy. So it's extends beyond the facilities and speaks to an overall strategy that we're hoping to compare ourselves with other municipalities where they charge out for park rentals, setups for events and things like that.
Right, thank you. But just to clarify, we do, as the municipality, own the curling rink, maintain it, and that does incur a fee and a cost to us as a municipality. So are we looking at trying to achieve a 50% cost recovery on what we're spending to maintain that building?
Through the chair, at this time, no, it does not include the curling club. The existing lease with the curling club would have to be examined to actually charge them a substantial rent in order to recover a portion of the fees associated or the expenses associated with that facility.
Right, and when is that agreement up?
I'm sorry, I don't have that off the top of my head. I believe it was just renewed maybe 2 or 3 years ago for 5 years, so probably in a couple of years, is my guess.
Okay. I know I've mentioned this to you before, but I remain concerned that we have this one facility that does provide recreation that just is consistently not included in these discussions. It's consistently not considered in cost recovery. It's consistent, like, it's there, and we don't include it as part of these discussions. And my preference would be, and I understand that this is probably that this would be kind of impossible to do immediately because of the reasons of the lease, and I think that would be an unfair burden of cost to that group to all of a sudden just put in their laps. But it is something that's on my mind, that we do have one facility that one group uses, and currently our cost recovery on that is probably not 50%. It's probably quite a bit lower than that. So that's just something that keeps on my mind. One other question of clarification I have is, you mentioned that the current recovery rates for all of our facilities is currently around 52 or 53%, we estimate. Is that equal across all facilities, or is one kind of covering for another? Are they all at about 50%?
Through the chair, Councillor Langmaid, no, that is an average of the 4 facilities I spoke to. We have some facilities that obviously the operating costs are substantially more than they are at other facilities. The best example is if you compare the arena versus the sports center, obviously the cost of a Zamboni and that sort of setup, the staff involved in flooding the ice and that sort of things versus a facility where you rent out the space and roll out some basketballs or a facility setup. Obviously the cost recovery on that facility is much higher versus an arena or versus the pool or the civic center.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. That's kind of what I anticipated. So then when I'm reading this, I should be understanding this is 50% cost recovery of the item as a total. So not necessarily 50% at each facility, but 50% overall as the larger part of the program. Is that correct?
Yes, through the chair, it relates not just to facility rentals, but also programs, admission fees, et cetera, facility setup, equipment rentals, sales of merchandise or retail items that we can do. Provide some staff with some guidance on when they can discount and that sort of stuff and that rate of recovery. So again, it's beyond just facility rates and memberships and things like that.
Perfect, thank you. And then just my final question about the policy that's been put in front of us. Just for clarification on who would be responsible for setting of the fees, and if that isn't council, how would council be informed that fees are changing other than our annual review of the fees bylaw if they were to change in the middle of the year? Because I see here that they may change if the quality of play is being impacted, and I assume that can happen in the middle of the year too, not just in November.
Through the chair, Councilor Langmaid, specifically the quality of play definition, that provision in this policy is written in such a way that if an event such as a power outage or ice deteriorations or something like that affects a facility rental or something like that, and a user group comes back and asking for a discounted rate for that facility rental, that the CEO or designate can then provide a discount at that time. The intent still is that council would then, the intent of the policy is that council still approves the rates and fees as fees and charges as they do normally. This just provides staff with a guideline based on some comparisons and some principles that, hey, we can't jack up fees to 700% increase. We have to maintain that minimum threshold as determined by council.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that clarification, because I had interpreted that differently. So I appreciate being corrected there and having the correct interpretation. Thank you very much.
I have a quick question. I received a call this week. The town installed a large screen at the Family Center that they're selling advertising on now.
Through the chair, Councilor Mitzner, that existing facility screen has been installed for several years. Actually,
It's the one outside on the building?
That structure, that display structure, has been on the outside since probably, I think, 2019. It's a display screen.
And you're taking it over?
The town is in ownership of that facility, that amenity, and we have, anytime there is revenues generated towards that does go to the facility.
And it goes directly to the town of Strathmore, not to
Correct.
the provider? Okay,
Correct.
because we are the provider.
We are the owner of the display screen on the side of the arena, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitzner. Coming back to Councillor Langmaid's comments on the curling rink, not only do we not consider that as the same kind of recreational facility and cost recovery as the other ones, but when their season ends, if they host things like a wedding, the revenue goes to them as well, whereas the season itself is over. So that's an interesting thing to consider as we move forward. Any other questions for, oh, sorry, I have Councillor Montgomery on screen.
So my first question is just I was hoping to get some elaboration on section 5.3 where it talks about the different rates between youth and adults. And so the Family Center says, at this point, it's indicated at 62% of the adult rate, and then the Sports Center is 75. Do you want to just, I guess, talk about why there's different rates for those different facilities?
Through the chair, Councilor Montgomery, that is based on our existing fees, as I indicated, and those fees have been established through comparison with other municipalities and of like-minded amenities and facilities. And so we're trying to use those benchmarks to coincide with the existing cost recovery for those two facilities.
Okay. Now, I think it's really worth impressing or keeping in mind that I don't think a lot of times we're comparing apples to apples when we look at other communities. Like, I understand that's kind of an easy way to, to kind of come up with price structures, but it's not the same. Like, our facilities are not the same as other municipalities, and not only that, but our people are different as well. I mean, like, as we know, the residents of Strathmore tend to be less well off, for instance, than other communities, and my desire, I guess, or preference would be that we are matching the value. In the end, that's what it comes down to. So it comes down to the value we're providing for the dollar or for the money that people are spending. And we obviously don't want to charge less than the value providing. But if we start charging more than the value we are providing, we will not make the sale, and we will actually end up losing money. And that's what my concern. When we went from $1,000 a couple of years ago for the all access pass annual pass, went from $1,000 to $1,500. And like, that's obviously a 50% increase. And was the value, were we undercharging before is the question. If we were undercharging, then we would have seen that, you guys, I'm assuming, would have come to us and said, "Hey, listen, you know what? We need to raise prices. Our recreation centers are too busy." I've never heard anybody say that they're too busy so far. And then, we looked at other communities and we changed our prices based on what other communities were doing, for I'll say similar types of amenities. And I believe that we've completely priced ourselves out of the value, first of all, that we're providing. And second of all, we've priced ourselves out of the range of what most residents of Strathmore can afford even. So for that reason, I don't like the idea of looking at other communities, to be honest. We need to be looking at the sales we're making so far, and what our historic sales have been based on those prices. If we add something of value, to a facility, that doesn't mean obviously just kind of buying something and plunking it in there and going, okay, now we can charge more. It has to be value to the people of the town. So I would prefer not to see anything in there about looking at comparable communities, because unless they have the exact same situation that we do, which none of them do, it's not the same thing. I've noticed that people, for instance, drive to Airdrie to use the pool at Genesis Place. I did that this past weekend myself. And I can tell you it's not at all the same thing as our aquatic center. And there's a reason why people are spending, so for me, I took myself and then my 3 kids and then plus one of their friends, and that was about $34 and something. And we actually rented 2 locks as well. And I'm not sure what that cost, but we drove as well. We took the time and we spent the money to drive there. because the value is different, for the comparable price, or for, what Airdrie was obviously charging a bit more than we do. But people see that as kind of worthwhile value.
Councillor Montgomery, I'm wondering if we could come back to just the focus on the cost recovery philosophy.
Well, but yeah,
And
well,
then- and then in the
cost
next
recovery
one-
isn't- it's
Sorry,
entirely
in the-
tied to the value we're providing.
Sure, I
and
know,
what we're
but in the
charging.
next one, we're actually specifically focusing on the fees bylaw. So we could come
Right,
back
no,
to
I
this
know, but if
discussion.
we're going to have a policy that dictates, some control over the fees, then we have to make sure that that policy is, and so the policy mentions, as I said, it mentions looking at other communities. I don't think that should be in there. I think we need to come up with, to use other people's phrase, made in Strathmore fees, whatever those may be. If they can be, if they can be higher than other communities because we're providing better value, then great. Let's charge higher fees. If we're not, then we have to charge lower. If the market isn't there, we could have a pool. We could have a sports center that's empty, and because we priced it so high, and what that doesn't really do us any good, because then as was demonstrated recently, we priced our passes, our annual passes, out of the range of people in town and the value we're providing. So I'm just making a comment that I don't think we should base it on other communities. And the other question I have is, let's say we gave you guys a policy that had to do with cost recovery, but we said we don't want you to look at fees. Could you guys look at other things? And you did touch on some of them, but if we said don't touch the fees beyond inflation, but we want you guys to look at recovering more of the cost, could you guys do that without touching the fees beyond inflation?
Through the chair, Council Montgomery, obviously this is council's policy, so as directed by council, we can adjust it accordingly. Obviously, the cost recovery, when you subtract revenue associated with admissions and memberships, would significantly would impact the cost recovery in general. The current evaluation includes all these categories mentioned here: facility rentals, programs, services, and membership and admissions.
Yeah. So I'm not saying we shouldn't be if I understand you correctly, I'm not saying we shouldn't be charging people, for the usage of the facilities. I'm just saying I don't want to have a policy where that's our main lever is fees, or at least increasing, usage fees, as kind of our main lever. I would like to see it where it's, it talks about in Section 8 about sales or promotional rates. And I noticed, I know there's a lot of, there's a lot of communities that are doing a lot of great things, to be honest, as far as promoting, the sale of more passes, the sale of more goods, the sale of more services, without actually kind of, necessarily pulling on the lever of the usage rates or fees. Yeah, a lot of this looks really good. I just, like I said, I would like it if we shied away from comparing ourselves to other communities, and then also I would like to see it where we are focusing more on the value, on kind of basically selling increased value to increase cost recovery. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Wiley and then Councillor Peterson.
Yeah, I think I'm going to springboard off of what Councillor Montgomery was saying. To me, this policy wasn't quite what I was expecting when I heard it was coming. And having spent the last few minutes thinking about it, I think what I was expecting is it would be something more like, what if the title was something like this? Recreation and cultural services recovery policy. And instead of it, our only lever being fees, we challenged our recreation facilities to recover a certain percentage, be it 55 or 60%. There are other levers, so allowing advertising into our facilities or facility rentals in ways they hadn't already conceived, or sponsorships or fundraising. When other user groups come in, we ask them, how are you fundraising? What sponsorships are? But yet for our own facilities, we don't hold ourselves, I think, to the same account. So the direction I would like to direct administration is to make this policy bigger. It doesn't have to be this week. It could be something that they take back, or we could even still pass this and then it could be something that comes back to us again. But I would like it to be more of a recovery policy instead of just a fees policy.
Through your worship, through Councillor Wiley, all those revenue generating options, whether it's the sale of a rink board, a sponsorship sale of a display of advertising inside the building or outside of the building, are already incorporated into this policy and all count towards revenue generated by that facility and therefore go towards the cost recovery portion already. That's one thing we're trying to work on with the CEO bylaw, is to give the CEO some permission to increase and decrease those rates on advertising elements specifically, not associated with fees, rentals, programs, et cetera.
That's excellent. So could it just be a title change then? It seems like that is what it is. I guess I think one of my biggest surprises as a councillor is that these massive expenses that we have, something like, for example, the pool, that they don't come in and present to us, that they don't come in and say, here's our business case, here's what we are currently recovering, here are the things we're doing to raise revenues, here are the things we're doing, in the same way maybe a library would come in. I've been really surprised by that, and I guess then I get this and I see a number like 50% recovery, and it just sort of, it's hard to contextualize what that means. I guess I'm not directing administration in any way. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. One of the comments earlier from Councillor Montgomery talked about how we shouldn't use comparable communities, but I think that's covered in 6.1, which is on page 119. And it says, program fees shall be established by determining a fair market rate using comparable communities. But then there's a second statement that says local market conditions shall be considered in the establishment of rates. So I think that gives us the leeway to consider Strathmore's socioeconomic condition and what our market can handle and what our prices can be. So I think it still puts us in a good policy as far as the cost recovery, but it does allow for some flexibility in considering Strathmore as a unique community with its own limitations and positives.
Your worship,
Kevin?
I'd just like to comment that the comparison to other communities is just one thing that is taken into account here. It is not solely based on that. And we need to actually continue to do that. Because if we're dirt cheap, everybody's coming here, and then the local users are having less opportunity. Conversely, if our prices are too high, then everybody is going somewhere else. Revenue is equal to price times quantity, right? If we're going to talk economics and supply and demand and everything. So, you can't just look at that one factor. It's government interference in the free market, if you want to consider it in that terms, and you're going to mess up the supply-demand curve, and then actually will realize less revenue. It is one factor. Certainly we don't base all our fees decisions solely on what other people are doing, but it's something that we have to take into account.
Thank you for that. Councillor Peterson, then Councillor Mitzner.
Thank you. So one of the questions that I have, Director, is how much do you think the RC strategies results on the needs assessment will help inform this whole process? Do you think it will have an impact?
Through the chair, Councilor Peterson, I can't wager a guess on what the needs assessment will will actually reveal to the community. I know I'm familiar with a lot of other communities that actually do a rates and charges assessment as well, and they do those comparisons. I found a document, and it is a couple years old, that the city of Red Deer prepared in 2021. They contracted out by KPMG, and they were trying to determine what their cost recoveries were. They had their expenditures per capita, and the average from Red Deer cities, specialized municipalities, summer villages at 49%. Now that's 2021 data, so obviously it's outdated, but that's how one city approached their rates and fees, and to try to spend some additional money to get a better, broader approach of that. And as CAO Scoville indicated, they're using direct comparisons as best they can. Obviously, it's apples to apples in some case where a sheet of ice is a sheet of ice. Right. But there are other amenities where if you have a weight room or squash courts or something like that, may change the value and the cost of an amenity.
In 2017-18, this council undertook, when we were doing the original recreation use assessment, we undertook that major matrix around measurement and how it would be gauged in terms of its success relevant to the needs of the population. I remember Mayor Fuel saying that he would rather open a vein than ever go through something like that again. And it was laborious, for council. So my hope is, like, every time I go through this, I see this document before us today, this very, very detailed document that you've prepared for council as a recovery model. And I appreciate councilors, Deputy Mayor's comments with regards to that. And I do think that it's something that fits into a strategic plan, because just like our businesses and just like our town, we all need some level of predictability. So I do think that it enters into a strategic planning process that can be guided by what you've provided us today, and with this needs assessment coming forward, that in future strategic planning efforts in the new year, that this can definitely be brought up, and we can talk about what is a reasonable rate of recovery for this community, and take in all those metrics that our CAO has and that Councillor Montgomery referenced earlier, whether it's a health matrix or a mental health matrix or however we look at it, but we should do it in the process of a strategic plan and under our current process. And also that I just want to say that the idea of using information from comparable communities or other communities, in my understanding, my recollection, was directed to administration by this council in every year that we've become involved in setting these fees, that we did direct council to do comparatives of other communities. So it seems like a reasonable thing. And I'm not sure that we should put tolls on our walking path bridges, but maybe we could.
Councillor Mitzner and then Councillor Montgomery.
Can you investigate, or do you prefer the provider comes to you? I know years ago, Patty, especially for certification for diving, and especially now in the winter months when people are starting to travel, that some of the local communities ran the courses here versus the local residents having to drive to Calgary to do that.
Through the chair, Councillor Mitzner, yes, if there's a relationship with existing business that we can partner with to deliver a program or a service, no different than we do with our swimming lessons. We actually, in reality, use a third party, used to be Red Cross, now it's Life Saving Society. Mm-hmm. We deliver their programming on behalf of them. We could set up a relationship with a company like this where we can do the administrative aspect of it, collect the registrations, and then they deliver the
because
service.
They have the equipment and the instructors, but that's not something we would go after as a town? That they would have to come to us?
Typically, we don't know what businesses are out there, and so if there was a business that expressed interest in this, that we could definitely consider how it would work within our existing offerings, obviously to maximize utilization of the facility while not impacting how the public or how our current offerings are supplied.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. I think CAO Scoble, I almost called him Councilor Scoble. I think CAO Scoble makes a good point about we don't want to price ourselves too low, or we'll be attracting people. I actually would be totally fine with having a higher standing rates, but then with lower rates that are accessible to people in Wheatland County and Strathmore. Because I certainly believe, obviously we are subsidizing, our facilities quite heavily, and I certainly believe that it's not. We need to basically, like Strathmore people or the people subsidizing, which is Strathmore and Wheatland County, need to have first dibs, priority, and I'm less concerned about whether people in other communities can access our facilities for a reasonable rate. So I know that's when I say that, I'm not anticipating where it's like everybody has to show ID or something like that. But if they were simply just kind of asked, hey, where are you from, or something like that. But I wouldn't be against looking at something where we're charging people who aren't from Strathmore or Wheatland County more money for our facilities. But thank you.
Thank you. CAO Scoble?
Yeah, just some more comments to consider on that. So, there's overhead to do that type of stuff, right? And certainly if council wants to, that investment can be made in systems and people to track where other people are coming from. I've seen this discussion had in other regions of Alberta, and you have to be very careful because there's a little fish and there's a big middle fish, and then there's a really large shark out there. And where I came from, that really large shark was Edmonton, and they loved the discussion because they couldn't wait to charge out-of-town people more to use the zoo, more to visit the fort, more to go to the planetarium, right? So that's where the ICFs and the intermunicipal collaboration really comes in, rather than getting into price wars with other municipalities.
And we're still planning to work with a city like Chestermere, for example, on recreation and cost sharing, that kind of thing.
Yes, we're having some of those discussions currently.
Thank you. Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you, Worship. Just to kind of close out my thoughts on this, I just wanted to thank administration for bringing this forward. I'm actually pretty excited about this. From the perspective of governance, this is a conversation that I've been waiting to have in terms of, I'm much more excited to set a cost recovery rate and let the experts kind of take a look at it and how that might be achieved. From my level, that's kind of the level I like to operate at. I don't enjoy the nitpicking over who charges what, $15.25 or $15.75. It just gets a little specific for me. So I just want to thank you for the work that you've done on this and the opportunity to look at it through this lens of how can we as a council still provide direction to administration on what we'd like to achieve, but at the same time look at it from a high enough level that we're not nitpicking over individual fees or how much, what do we consider a toddler up to the age of 2 or the age of 3 and things like that. So just thank you very much for your work on this, and I'm excited to discuss it again at another council meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Langmaid. Deputy Mayor Wiley.
Is there any appetite from the rest of council to direct administration to have a sliding scale, though, so that the cost recovery does go up year over year, or is there any other appetite for that?
So it's built into.
So it's built in. So it would say in the following year it would go up to 55 and so on.
Oh, as far as the percentage of cost recovery.
Percentage of cost recovery.
Oh, I see. Okay, let me think on that one. Councillor Peterson.
I'd rather wait to do that in a strategic planning session. I'd rather wait until we had the RT strategies back with the whole scope of the needs assessment that's coming back in January. I'd rather wait until then. I think that's exactly what we would want to do, but I think there's a lot of extraneous considerations, and it's not something I'd be prepared to support in the moment.
Councillor Montgomery and then Councillor Langmaid again.
Thank you. So 2 things. One, in response to that idea, I think the problem, and I'll have to give more thought, obviously, but with inflation and inflationary costs, we're already kind of chasing, a dollar of value when we set a fixed rate anyways. And so if we kept kind of increasing the rate, we would almost be compounding the cost we would have to be recovering. So I would be concerned about that. And I was going to ask as well, so I noticed it mentions in here school rates, and then it kind of outlines what qualifies as a school. Was there any discussion about, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if this has already been kind of dealt with, but was there any discussion about including homeschool groups as a school group or a school rate?
Through the chair, Councillor Montgomery, we've left this term pretty vague in terms of what defines a school group, whether it's within Strathmore and surrounding areas. In the past, we've obviously groups from Golden Hills is our primary school rate user, but we've had other municipalities, I think from Langdon and such, that have inquired about facility rentals and school rates. But at this time, it's kind of vague and open there to Strathmore and surrounding areas. But if council wishes it to define borders and define it a little better, then we are definitely open for that conversation.
Councillor Montgomery, may I? I think it is open to that because most homeschool groups are registered with a school division. And so I think the ambiguity leaves it open to include that already, would it not?
Okay, I'm just looking at the part where it says the school program must be provincially registered or associated, and the program shall be operated, managed, and delivered by the registered associated school. So, like for myself, for example, I am with a school board. That school board's actually in Calgary, because you can go with a school board anywhere in Alberta, actually, when you're homeschooling. And so it wouldn't be the school board, like with the way I do homeschooling, and some people choose to do it. You don't actually do anything through the school board. It's all totally self-directed, and so it would never so I'm just concerned about the wording where it's saying that it has to be delivered by the associated school, for instance, or that the school program must be provincially registered or associated, because that isn't exactly how homeschooling tends to work in Alberta.
So
but
you would,
if the intent is to allow homeschoolers to be included in that, then I think that's great. We might want to just kind of massage the wording a bit.
I agree with that. When I read that, I thought it included homeschool groups because most homeschool groups, as long as they're registered through a school board, and then I believe, Councillor Montgomery, wouldn't you have to basically inform the board that that's sort of part of the homeschooling, and then at that point, isn't it registered?
Well, so I would guess let's differentiate between homeschool group and homeschool people or homeschool families, for instance. So homeschoolers or homeschool families do certainly register with a board, and then they kind of deal with the board. In Strathmore, for instance, there are about, I think, let's say 3, although the members tend to all kind of blend together into the same groups. But there's about 3 homeschool groups, I'll call them, where it's just kind of informal, parents, kids, that kind of get together and arrange field trips and get-togethers and social events and other learning opportunities. So it's that's to me, that's kind of the difference. And so sometimes we do rent a facility around town as a group, but it's not done through any school board or anything like that. It's entirely independent.
Mark, did you want to weigh in on that section?
Through the chair, I believe obviously the intent is there not to exclude any specific group, and so if this definition does not meet council's desire, we can definitely look at it. My understanding is that homeschool programs also get a school rate if applicable.
Yeah, because I believe there's about 10% now of the population is homeschooled, so I would hate to exclude that many students.
Yeah, I'd say there's probably 100 to 150 kids at least being homeschooled in town right now.
Okay, I have another question for council.
Deputy Mayor?
Is there any appetite from this council to add into this policy that these different rec and cultural facilities would come and do an annual presentation, just similar to what the library does, where they present fees, usership, fundraising, sponsorship, outreach, year-over-year use, but also include cost recovery.
I'm not sure if that would put us in a situation where we're
I
getting
think you're
into
providing
operations.
direction to administration, not through the CAO. I think that's probably a discussion we should have at another time.
Okay. Did you catch that?
No, I don't understand.
You are bypassing the CAO and providing direction to administration. I am your only employee.
I was asking if council had any appetite. If none of them do, then I would have no direction to the
I'm
CAO.
advising council that they would be providing direction not through the CAO to administration.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Langmaid?
Thank you, Worship. Just in response to Councillor Wiley's couple of questions here, I think it is in terms of setting an ongoing increase to our cost recovery rates. I think that's a nice thing for us to aspire to. I would like to go through this for a few years and kind of get it under our belts, really understand how it works. And also, you know, I'm conscious of the fact that these days life seems to change pretty quick around here. And there seems to be, you know, another, you know, kink thrown into the best plans, no matter how well we try and predict the future. So that's just something that's on my mind. So maybe one day, but not now. And in terms of bringing in our facilities to come and present like we do other community groups, it is different in the fact. It's different to me in the fact that those facilities are wholly owned, operated internally here by the town, which just puts them under a different structure than we see for community groups, and I'm not sure that I would. That just doesn't feel appropriate to me. That's something that's, yeah. I feel like I would be out of my lane to have the operators of our rec facilities come in and try and make their case to us, because I'm just not sure what I would do differently with that information. I'm not going to close the pool, you know. Yeah, I'm not sure that would be something that I would be in favor of at this time.
And again, I would think that the facility managers and the directors would be reporting and making requests to our CAO, and then he in turn could come to us. Are there any more questions for Mark? Mark, did you have any closing comments?
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. I just want to point council to the Section 12, the review of this policy. Our current practice is to review policies every 3 to 4 years. If council wishes, we could bring this policy back on a regular basis by amending the policy accordingly. Bring it back every 2 years, bring it back every year, and that way we can look at, ultimately, again, this is just a draft, and if council wishes for a more robust review of this policy, we can easily amend it.
Councillor Langmaid?
It's not a hill I'd die on, but I wouldn't mind seeing it every couple of years. Not every year. That I want it to be long enough that there's an opportunity for when you change a little something here, that we have enough data to be able to analyze and see what the impact of that change was. And I think having the opportunity to change everything every year would probably just throw off all of that data. But at the same time, I feel like I would like, if I'm lucky enough to come back for another term, I would probably like to see it twice in that term rather than just once. That's just my thought.
And 12.2 says it shall be reviewed at least once every 4 years. So we do have latitude there, I believe, too.
Yeah,
Deputy Mayor Wiley.
Sorry, I like every 2 years. That'd be good.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Mark, for your presentation and your willingness and ability to answer a lot of questions.
May I call a recess?
Yeah, you can make a motion.
I would like to make a motion for a recess.
You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And we'll take a 5-minute recess. Okay.